One more. Give me something. Yeah. What's up, Sea Change? My name is Ronald Young Jr. I'm an audio producer and a storyteller from Washington, D.C. Well, yeah, make some noise, yeah. Alexandria, Virginia, to be specific. I'm so glad y'all could join me. Welcome to Testify. And let's give a round of applause for my friend and organist, Tedrick Bonds. Tedrick and I, we grew up together in the same church in Washington, D.C. It was called Greater Refuge Temple. And long before Tedrick started playing the organ, when we were kids, we were at church and they had something called Praise and Testimony Service. Yeah, all right. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. So Praise and Testimony Service was something that happened early. It was before the preaching, before the offering, before the choir sang, and people would come and they would sing and they would give what are called testimonies, where they like kind of affirm their relationship with God through the stories of what happened in their lives. It was kind of like a very, very friendly open mic, minus the signups and all that stuff, no booings. It was all very supportive. And as a kid, I loved Praise and Testimony Service. I loved the testimonies because as a kid, it was just like, oh, this is story time. I'm ready. And there were three types of testimonies at testimony service. You had your first one where somebody would be like exhorting and it'd be very abstract. They'd be like, I've come to tell you that God is a good guy. Yeah. So those weren't my favorite because those were abstract and it was just like, nah, I need to hear something. The second type was more gossiptainment. So it'd be like someone get up there and just tell you all their business. Like, yo, I was at work and Brian is sleeping with the secretary, but let me tell you something, I'm gonna be all right. He got fired last week and I got a promotion. Like it was that. They were just telling everything. They were naming names, all of that. And like those were like salacious. And even in times when they didn't name names, sometimes they would just be talking about things and you're like, I kind of know the details. You're talking about sister so-and-so, ain't you? Like those would happen. Those weren't my favorite. My favorite type of testimony was the ones where there'd be peril, where someone would get up and they would start with a billboard. They'd be like, I came to tell y'all that God is a deliverer. My ears would perk up. I'm like, okay, what did he deliver you from? Tell me about it. They'd be like, I was driving on 95 and a car came over, swerved over, almost hit me. We hit the side of the wall and I said, Jesus. And the car just slowed to a halt. Everybody, oh! It was the best one. Those are people saying, you know, my lights were turned off. Things were bad. They came in, they were gonna shut off my lights if I didn't pay, and I didn't have the money. And then all of a sudden on the 9th hour, the Lord came in the nick of time. I was like, yes. That's what I wanted as a kid. I wanted that story, you know, and it felt so good to me. And, you know, the organ and the drummers and everybody being in one room, and it just felt like fascinating. I loved it so much. And that was my earliest time that I realized that I loved storytelling. It started there. When I started to look back in my brain and started thinking about this art form that I love, it started with Praise and Testimony Service. And so many years later, when I started getting into storytelling, I wanted to bring my own style to it. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to keep it with the tradition that I'd known. And I felt like I was adding to it as I told my own stories. But one pet peeve that I have is that in the rise of storytelling, in the popularity, the use of the word storytelling and storyteller has gotten a little ubiquitous in some ways. Like people are talking about selling cars. I got to tell you the story of this Tesla. Like that's not a story. Like that's a sales pitch, you know? So it became important for me to talk about us kind of reclaiming what storytelling is. So I talked to Alex, I talked to Greg, and I said, hey, I want to reclaim storytelling. I want to come to Sea Change. I want to bring y'all a storytelling show that just feels like classic storytelling. How do y'all feel about that? So I'm excited tonight. I'm excited. We got some stories. We're gonna sing a little bit. Y'all are gonna sing a little bit. There'll be some dancing. This is meant to be a good time, all right? Y'all feel like having a good time? Yeah. All right, good. All right, this is gonna be a good time. So, okay. How long you holding that one in, Kyle? He's like, I'm gonna get it. So I'm so excited. I brought some friends with me, and I'm so excited to bring each of them to the stage. We're gonna tell y'all some stories, we're gonna sing some songs, and we're gonna talk about the art and the craft of storytelling, and that'll be the night. All right. So without further ado, I wanna bring our first storyteller to the stage. She has been on NBC, she has been on NPR, and next year she'll be on Hulu and Disney Plus in Muslim Matchmaker. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to bring to the stage the very talented, my friend, Yasmin Elhady.
Thank you. I've always wanted a Muslim at church. Hello. I'm here to testify. Hello, everyone. What up? So I am a refugee. Cool. That's cool. You can be quiet. It's fine. I thought you guys were woke, but apparently not. It's always like until you say asylum. So I am, I'm half Egyptian, half Libyan. Yeah, I know, it's a big group here. That's supportive. So my mom's Egyptian and my dad is Libyan. And my dad was like a teeny tiny bit smidge in the Gaddafi regime. Just a little bit. Where you're like, that tastes spicy. Is that cumin? What is that? You're tasting dictatorship. And it blows the palate. So my dad was a cabinet minister in the Gaddafi regime. High key, not low key. But if you could say it with me, I said asylum. I said refugee. My dad morally abstained against the Gaddafi regime, and he actually lost everything as a result. And then we country hopped 6 countries to get to the freedom and safety of these United States. Yeah, America. That's the story of America. And then my parents took me to a place that is neither free nor safe. Alabama. That is where I grew up. That's where they still live. Testify, I'm gonna testify right here. If you're wondering why I don't sound like I'm from Alabama, it's because my English as a second language teacher, Miss Mooney, was from Connecticut. So I sound like her. And the kids were like, why do you talk funny? That's so weird. Why do you talk like that? And I'm like, I'm a Yankee. I'm stuck here with you. So I grew up, my parents were very religious, very conservative, very demure, very mindful, super mindful. My dad was so religious that when I would call him, I'd be like, hey, Baba, where are you? What's up? He'd be like, I don't know where you will be on the day of judgment. And then just hang up the phone in my face. Sorry, that hang up is a lot better than this beautiful mic. I'm not going to do that again, okay? Just imagine it. Okay, I'm just going to make this noise instead, okay? Or I'd be like, hey, how are you? And he's like, I don't know where you will be in the cosmos. Where will you be in the universe? And then he would just hang up the phone. One time I called him, I got so excited. I was like, Dad, I got a scholarship. He's like, oh, you're so great. God is greater. And then he just hung up the phone in my face. So were they a little bit judgmental? Maybe. Is there a little bit of trauma? A lot. A lot of trauma to unpack here. This is therapy. Welcome to my session. So my mom to this day is probably the most judgmental human being I've ever met. No one else here can relate. Does anyone have a Jewish mom? Anybody? Okay, Catholic mom? All right, so maybe. Okay, Baptist mom? Anyway, so any mom? Anyone have a mom? Just making sure. Great. And so when my mom doesn't like something, she goes, that's Arabic, so I'm going to translate. That means you're not good enough. You're not. And it's also the sound of my nightmare alarm clock. You know, I just like wake up with a cold sweat at 2 a.m, like, you're gonna wear that? You could have been doctor, but no, you want to kill me. Stuff like that. And so I have 2 children, and I'm happy because they're not here today. I am. Anyone else have kids? And do you pretend to like them too? So anyways, I do. I love them. Some days it's hard, but when I'm away from them, it's fantastic. People are like, how do you do it? How do you leave your 2 kids at home and tour? And I'm like, I don't know. How do I? How do I go to a hotel room and sleep uninterrupted for 8 hours? How do I do it? Someone's got to take one for the team. You know, when a man is traveling for work, he's just making money for the family. But when a woman is traveling for work, she's committed a hate crime. Like, what? Why is someone calling Child Protective Services? I'm just working. So I had my mom and dad come over in January to help me because I'm a bad mom. And when she was downstairs in the basement, I heard her go. So I ran down there to figure out what was going on, to diagnose the problem. And she's like looking at me, and she's got her head down, and she's doing this. And I'm like, Mom, are you okay? What's going on? She's like, it's all your failures and all your disappointments and your children so much. I'm like, great. Am I dismissed? I don't know. She's like, I just feel a little bit hot, a little bit dizzy. I'm like, hot, and should I take you to the doctor? And she's like, I don't know if you would even do that for me, but I feel a little bit numb. And I was like, numb? Where do you feel numb? She's like, in my arm and in my chest. I was like, we have to go to the ER right now. Now, my dad is upstairs. He's 81. He's adorable. And he's like, I'm coming too. I'm like, sit down, old man. All right, fine, get in the car. So we all go to the ER. And my mom is talking to them, and then she goes, like she's powering down. And the ER physician looks at me. She's like, your mom's having a stroke. We're going to run every test right now. Please don't panic. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm fine. She's like, are you having the stroke? Just sit down. I have to take care of your mom. And my dad is like, just sit here with me. It'll be okay. It's the waiting room. And they run every test on my mom. MRI, EKG, CAT scan. They do a sugar panel. They try to figure out if she needs meclizine maybe for vertigo. They bring in a neurologist, a cardiologist, a gynecologist. I'm like, what? They run a pregnancy test. I'm like, that's enough, Dr. Miller. That is enough. They could not figure out what's wrong with my mom. They're like, listen, we're going to have to run another MRI in the morning. We're going to put her under observation. So I sit and I just take in all of that. And they said, look, it's really important because we had a patient arrive in the ER like this 2 weeks ago, and then they passed. I'm like, all right, no pressure. You told me to calm down. I'll stay calm. And I sat there, and my mom was like, you need to calm down. And she fell asleep. And then I got the hell out of there because I had to take my dad out of there. And I get home, and the next morning I'm there at 8 in the morning, and they bring in an occupational therapist. They bring in another neurologist. They cannot understand what cardiac episode she's had, what neurological episode she's had. And they're like, look, your mom is a fall risk. Take her home, and we're going to put a band around her. Just catch her if she falls. Catch her. I'm like, yeah, I'm strong. I will catch all 225 pounds of her. That's fine. I get her in the car. I get home, and my dad is there, and he's sitting on the couch, and I'm like, I'm going to just put her right here next to you, okay? He's like, yeah, I got it. It's fine. I'm good. I'm like, you're 81, but just pretend like you are going to take care of her. I have to go upstairs and waste my life on a Microsoft Teams. So I'm an attorney. So that's what anyway, so I come down after an hour and a half, and my mom is feeling better, but my dad looks at me. He's like, I don't feel so good. I'm feeling a little bit dizzy. I'm like, what? And then she looks at him, and she's like, it's not about you. It's not always about you. I'm like, Mom, chill out. She's like, oh, you're crying like a baby. Like, Mom, there could be something seriously wrong. And he's like, I'm fine. And then he knocks out. And I'm like, I have to call 911. She's like, he's sleeping, he's fine. I'm like, he's not sleeping, Mom. I'm on the phone with 911. He comes back and he goes, I'm okay. I just died a little bit. What? He's like, I see 1,000 colors and 1,000 animals. And I'm like, is that Alabama? Is that heaven? What? Just stay with me. And my mom is like, I want to know. Immigrant mom all the way. She's like, what did you eat in the morning? He's like, nothing. I had some breakfast and some candy and I had a little bit of eggs. And she's like, oh, I had candy too. I'm like, wait, what kind of where's the candy that you had? And they're like, it's a Turkish delight. This is delicious. I'm like, show me where the Turkish delight is. I go to the counter. It is 100 milligrams of THC weed gummies. My parents were lit. They were stoned out of their minds. They were high for 3 days. My dad woke up. He ate an entire French baguette and 3 cans of tuna. Crazy munchies. My mom was like the panicked cottonmouth high. My dad was like the, oh, I'm flying high. Feed me everything. And I just looked at them and I go, thank you all. You've been a wonderful audience.
Okay, what a story.
Yeah. Unfortunately true. $42,000 medical bill. But I did say I was a lawyer, so we negotiated. I was like, something criminal probably happened. You have to make this 0. They weren't my gummies. They weren't.
That's an important distinction.
They weren't. Absolutely not. They're not. 100. That's crazy. 100 milligrams.
So all of your stories tend to be infused with like humor, lots of jokes. You like that?
I do like that.
Why is that important to your storytelling?
I think humor is the way to connect with people in a way that is very disarming. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking about it like this experience was very traumatic.
Yeah.
I was crying in the ER, and then like my dad was like, calm down, you know? And I feel like now that I can tell it back with humor, it's just so much easier to digest. And I think people see themselves through the humor, and it diffuses a lot of awkward tension.
When do you think it went from being a traumatic experience to something that you knew you could tell on stage later? Like, how does that transition happen in your mind?
Well, my dad was like, I want more. And I was like, okay, we're making this into a story. We're gonna do this. By the way, sir, you can't keep coughing in public. You can't do that. He's like, everyone has got scared. It was just a joke. He's fine. He's wearing pink pants. He's fine. So, like I knew I could joke with you. Honestly, yeah. When my dad was kind of like, that was fine. It was the closest to death, but it's fine. I felt like, oh, maybe I could make it kind of funny. And my mom also just kind of gave me the license to poke fun at it, because I think that's what you do with pain. You either cry about it or laugh about it. I choose laughter.
I love that. So talk to me about your storytelling origin story. Did it start with you just being entertaining and cracking jokes, or
yes.
Did you really? Or did it?
Correct, at birth. Correct.
Or did it was there a more formal entry that you had into it?
No formal entry. I realized I was funny. Mm-hmm. When I was like in the 3rd grade, and people like saw me do SNL skits, and I was like, can they see me? Because I'm just in the corner doing my thing. Like I would just run an SNL skit. I had a very strong inner world, and it was Alabama. Did you guys hear what I said? So I was like, I'm not gonna have friends. I'm gonna be friends with me, you know? Chris Farley was my friend, you know? Phil Hartman was my friend. I did like Subliminal Man from Kevin Nealon. Like there was all these, and then later Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry, and I would just, and Molly Shannon. Anyways, I'm gonna stop. But those were kind of my heroes. And then I realized someone was watching me. They're like, you should be a stand-up comedian when I was 8. And I was like, does that come with a health plan? What's the 401k on that? Yeah, I really wanted stability, and so I was gonna follow that path. But I realized I was kind of funny. But as an immigrant, I'm like, I have to buy my passion. you don't get to like follow your dreams. Are y'all okay out here? Some of you are following your dreams, but I'm not. And I had to buy it. And I remember by the time that I got into 7th grade, there's another fun story about that, but I realized that I could make fun of the teachers, and people like that. And I would just run the whole like home ec class, you know? I had a crazy teacher named Miss Gamble, and she talked like this, and she was like, I earned every carrot, and she'd have like a 2-carat ring, and I'm like, that's low, you're low. He bought low, you know? But, you know, and she would, you know, she'd talk about press your foot down, Chuck, all this stuff, and she would just be funny. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And then it made people laugh, and then the cheerleaders laughed, and then you're in. I was like, this shit's powerful. And then I started doing storytelling. To be honest, the first time I did storytelling was in grad school. My last grad school, I went to grad school 3 times, it's fine. And then the third time, it's 3 strikes and you're in. And I won Princeton's talent competition doing comedic storytelling. And I was like, oh, I could like maybe take this to the next level. And that was back in 2015. And I had photos in the back because people didn't believe my story. And I was like, no, I really am from Alabama. And like this is my family. And my dad really has a farm, you know, and he really is a hippie from the desert, from North Africa, but in Alabama, you know, it was so odd. And so then I started kind of getting into it more formally. I was like, maybe I could do a show. And then I started doing more shows, and then people sent my casting tape to the same, I didn't send it. Some person was kind enough to send something to NBC, and then that's how I got booked for a storytelling show, and that's rest is history.
So I love it. I love the way you use humor, and I love it. You use it to process pain. I love it. But do you ever think that there's a balance between actually, you know, feeling the pain and processing the pain? Like, how do you manage that?
Are you talking about feeling real feelings?
Yeah, well, I know you do.
Look, some people have drugs, Ron. I do this instead of drugs. No, I definitely feel pain. I process pain through years of grief. And I kind of go under, sometimes for a month, sometimes for more than that. And I actually need to process pain away from people. Usually it's for months, and then I can come back and spin it into gold by really developing a story around it or a comedic bit, because oftentimes, I mean, people say this all the time, comedians are they have like very dark sides to them. I don't know what else is, like a dark, slipping sadness. Some of them, you know, unfortunately take their own lives, and a part of like comedy is to process all of that pain. And I think that you have to feel all the feelings and feel the grief and not numb it. A lot of comedians are addicts because of that, because they've had to learn coping mechanisms. They're self-medicating, they're trying to deal with their trauma. So I have so much compassion for artists who often have to learn how to spin their pain into gold. And that takes the form of so many art forms, you know. Whether that be poetry or music or painting or comedy or cooking or dancing. Like, there's so many beautiful things. It's like all the texture of life. And I feel like those are the things that make you feel things truly. Like when an artist is bringing the way that they coped with something real, it's like an arrow that's being piercing. You know, it's coming out of their bow and it's just piercing you. And that is the beauty of art. And that's the beauty of, I think, taking the time to process your feelings and hopefully figuring out a way to not get mired in numbing the feelings.
It's funny, there's a saying they say, tell stories from your scars and not your wounds.
Oh.
Yeah, it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing.
Yes, because the wound must close.
Exactly, yeah. And you don't want to be bleeding on stage.
Don't want to be bleeding on stage. You want like Mederma.
Yeah. What?
You need Mederma. Well, the scar is there. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You're a man. You don't understand.
I don't.
I've had 2 children. Lots of Mederma.
Yasmin, are you ready for another story?
No. Of course I am. I'm so excited.
Are y'all ready for more? All right. I'm so excited about our next performer, teller, coming to the stage. Their most recent album was called The Art of Forgetting. And personal story, many years ago, I'm a big Maggie Rogers fan, saw Maggie Rogers in Baltimore. The opening act was this next person. And just like on a whim, we found out that they were available to perform here with us. So it felt like a wonderful full circle moment. I'm really excited for you to see them. Please welcome to the stage, Caroline Rose.
Hello. Okay, that was really good. The weed, I didn't see that coming. I did not see that coming.
Neither did the ER. They had no didn't check for it. No talk screen.
My name's Caroline Rose, and yeah, the song's called Love Song for Myself. If I am a doormat, then I am hand-woven. I'm exceptional. I am a timeless treasure on a hardwood floor. Punching bag, that I am here to get you fit. You are a heavyweight fighter. I'm genuine cow leather. If I am lonely, if I am suffering, then I am the morphine. If I'm a death sentence, then I too am the relief from all the pain. Hurricane coming to destroy everything. The night to end, the return of all things beautiful. Maybe one day you will see all of the beauty within me. But until then, I'll be in touch. I'll just be here, falling in love.
Tell me, the song is called Love Song to Myself.
Yeah, love song for myself. Yeah.
Tell me the origin. How did this come to be?
Well, I was horrifically depressed, and I was going through like such a hard time. Actually, what you were talking about processing, how you need to process grief, and then you can write about it. That's so real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everything that you said, I was like.
That's how we match.
Yeah, I was just going through such a difficult time, and I had basically, it was like kind of writing all these songs, sort of processing everything that was happening, and then I realized I just had all these incredibly sad songs, and my dad was like, you gotta write a happy song. Like, you gotta write like you gotta try at least a little bit. And I like did not know, you know when it feels like all hope is lost and you're like, I just don't know how to love myself, but like I'm gonna like try to do the thing. And you don't really know how to do that, so you just like slap on some yoga pants and you're like doing downward facing dog. And you're like, I guess this is something. And I, yeah. But I thought I also use humor a lot, and even when I'm kind of at my absolute lowest, I'm like, well, the view is nice from down here. It's like, you kind of have to joke about it. Yeah. Or else it's too sad. It's too sad. Once the humor goes, it's like, so, I think I was just I think even at my lowest, I could look at myself with a perspective of like, wow, that's pathetic. Like that's really, you're so sad. And I wrote this song just sort of trying to go through the motions of loving myself. And I'm like, all right, well, if I'm a doormat, then I'm like a family heirloom doormat. And, if I'm like, I don't know, if I'm the saddest person, then I'm going to win an award for being the saddest person. Yeah. And so the whole song is...
Let me ask you, like, there's something my mom used to say. Sometimes we'd sing solos at church. And when we'd sing a solo, my mom would say to us, she said, you sing that song till you feel it, and then everybody else will feel it too. And I'm wondering if you're constructing a song, especially like this, that's meant to feel good to yourself, how long did it take you to have to write the song and sing it until you felt it?
I mean, I think that part happens immediately, because it's like to use some gospel terms, it's like a salvation moment. I mean, it's kind of a miracle art. Also, when you were talking about like artists, it's catharsis. It's amazing because I've had moments in my life where my feelings are so overwhelming that I feel like kind of autistic. I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this, and I'm gonna explode. And then I like, pick up an instrument, and it's like immediately you channel everything into it. And it feels kind of miraculous, like this crazy, I don't know. I was thinking about the Shakers and how like they couldn't have sex, and they like made this amazing furniture because they just have all this like sexual energy. I think about it like that. It's like the best chair you'll ever sit in your life. It's like someone who's like has a raging.
Shaking it off that chair. Yeah.
It's funny because like I feel like, not necessarily in contrast, but Yasmin, you're talking about going into a cocoon and kind of emerging a butterfly of humor, you know? And you're really talking about taking the guitar into the cocoon with you and playing yourself out of it. And I find that's interesting in terms of contrast, because you're saying like when you're in the hole, you're like, I need the guitar to get out. Do you think that's a correct assumption?
Yeah, no, I think that is correct. I think it's like when things are happening, like if something really intense happened, it would be too intense to be able to process it, but there's like a lag time where you're like, like the lag time you were talking about experiencing grief, it like sometimes happens like much later, and that's when you're like, okay, I'm ready to process this, and it does feel like you're kind of you take the whatever into the cocoon with you.
The guitar. Oh yeah, whatever.
The guitar, yeah, the guitar.
So do you? I think you're a storyteller. Do you fancy yourself a storyteller? Do you? And I know, like, we throw that term around, but I really think that you are telling stories through song in a way that is like very adjacent to what we do in the spoken word. Do you fancy yourself a storyteller?
Definitely.
That's
Yeah.
good.
I actually I feel like I could have been a writer. Like it kind of satisfies a lot of the same like parts of my brain.
You mentioned that you write a lot of sad songs, which we talked about before that, and I said, hey, if you sing a sad song, let's go. Like, what is it like to sing a sad song versus singing something that's more upbeat or happy? How do you feel? Like, or what are you trying to elicit from your audience?
Well, I did. My last album is just the saddest album of all time, but it's funny because I don't feel that sad anymore, and so when I perform it, I think like whatever I'm performing, whether it's like something really upbeat and kind of funny and fun, I can just like get into it right away. But then if I'm performing the sad material, it's just like being transported right back to where I was when I wrote it, and so it actually makes for a weird show. I think it makes for a really interesting show, but a lot of people, would disagree, I guess.
Talk to me about the craft. Like, are you? We talked a lot about processing your emotions, but like physically, how are you writing it down? Are you actually physically writing it, or are you keeping it in your head? How do you get the song from your head out of you into the world?
Oh, that's a really good question. All your questions are so good. I wish every interviewer was like you're like, so why do you like the color red? I'm like, I don't know, it reminds me of my mother's period blood or something.
Oh my God!
All right. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a good question.
Fertility.
I don't know. I think because sometimes I used to be like, no iPhone, absolutely no screens, because screens, are like everywhere, and it's not as romantic. But the amount of cocktail napkins that I've written a song on and then immediately lost, I'm like, okay, well, there is a point to having a device that you can carry around on you at all times. So I care less about that now. Like it's really just like get the idea down, and that's more important than anything. So sometimes I don't know. Sometimes it is nice to like write on a piece of paper, but oftentimes I have like a whole folder full of little tiny like voice memos of me like at 4 a.m. like waking up from a dream, being like. And you listen to it like 4 days later and you're like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, what key is this in?
Yeah.
So it just depends. I don't know.
I feel like I'm a person who makes up stupid things, stupid songs all the time that are just like little jingles, song stubs, and you're turning those essentially into full-blown music. Do you hear the keys in your head? Are you hearing it as a complete product, or is it just kind of start as a loop and then turn into something beautiful?
It's also a good question. Sometimes it's like a full thing in my head that I'm like, oh, I know what I want the drums to sound like, and I know what I want the bass part to be, and then I'll do all of it. But other times I'll just kind of tinker around on the piano or something, and that's all that came out. It's just like the vocal and the piano or whatever, and whatever else happens, like maybe somebody else will write the other parts. And
I think I'm when I saw you at Maggie Rogers, and I actually feel good to tell you this. When I saw you at Maggie Rogers, you were opening, and I remember you were touring, and I was like happy with what you were doing, and I remember thinking like, wow, that's amazing that somebody could do this for a living. And that was kind of, at that time, I was contemplating switching careers. You know what I mean? I was thinking about it, but it was like, I'm sitting there and I'm in a room. I'm like, yo, we're in a room they got a guitar, they're singing, they're making their dream come true. Like that's, and I was kind of planting the seeds back then. Like, wow, this is possibly something I can make my dreams come true too. Was there like a turn for you when you realized that you were going from writing these songs to something like touring the country and making albums and all that? Like, what's the connect from one to the other?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think if you're willing to be sleeping on a beanbag chair with a dirty thong on it every night for 10 years, then you too can have this dream as a living. Anyone can do this.
Why does it have to be dirty? It has to be dirty?
That's a true story, my friend. That's a true story. It was dirty. I don't know. I mean, I guess I just, it's not that I can't see myself doing anything else. I just have always enjoyed doing this the most. Like, really, songwriting is my big joy. Mm-hmm. And I think when I was younger, I was like, well, you tour. That's what you do. Mm-hmm. You write songs and then you tour the songs. Yeah. And I don't know, I guess I've just like done it long enough now that I'm trapped, you know? And it's too late to change. It's too late to change it now.
Caroline.
Just went into sadness.
Yeah, let's get that guitar and get you out.
I'm just crying. Like, no, I don't know. I love doing it, and I don't know. I guess it just feels so second nature. And when you're good at something and you enjoy doing it, I don't know. It's kind of like marrying your best friend or something. It's like, why not? Let's do it.
I feel like there's the one of the strong oral traditions of storytelling was, you know, people going from village to village to tell stories and tell stuff. That's how they would go word of mouth. And with singing, there'd be traveling bards. Like, have you ever made that connection that you are a traveling bard in a lot of ways?
That's really cool. I like that. Yeah. I'm gonna use that. Yeah. I'm gonna change my business card. Traveling bard.
I love that. Yasmin, in terms of like when you think about processing through humor versus through song, like what stops you from singing? What makes you do humor instead of singing? You know,
I'm not as good.
It just limited the
as
talent.
Caroline, I'm just not. She's really good, and she's also willing to have that beanbag life. Not me. Me nails.
Like, hashtag beanbag life.
Yeah. Hashtag dirty thong. I think I am a natural storyteller. I'm sure Caroline feels like she's a natural songwriter. Yeah. I just think you do what you love and what naturally comes to you, and that's where all the magic happens.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
All right, are y'all ready for more storytelling? Are y'all ready for more storytelling?
All right. I am so excited about our next storyteller. So back when I was working in IT, I'm full-time, I'm a freelancer in audio production, but back when I was working in IT, back in 2012, I used to sit at my desk and listen to podcasts all the time, 24/7. I would listen to Snap Judgment, I would listen to the Moth Radio Hour, I would listen to TED Radio Hour, I would listen to all those over and over again. And on Snap Judgment, I heard a storyteller. And I remember he got up there and he tells this story, and I remember being struck that this guy was telling this story in his authentic voice. He sounded just like authentically him. And that was the true spark that got me to go to the local storytelling organization in DC and start telling stories on my own. And I tell him this all the time, and I don't think he knows that in terms of his storytelling, it was very important, and it branched into my own storytelling. It was, it just felt good that to make that connection. So I'm glad to say he is my friend. He is the host of Homemade Stories. You've heard him on The Moth, you've heard him on Snap Judgment, and he proudly hails from Detroit, Michigan. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Shannon Cason.
Keep it going for Ron. You got my heart with that one right there. And then all the artists that we have, give it up for them one time. Let me hear you. I've been meeting so many cool people at Sea Change. I mean, people from all over. But I'm curious. I haven't met everybody. Like, just a short little census. Like, East Coast makes some noise. East Coast. All right, East Coast. Bold, yeah. West Coast makes some noise. Let me hear you. All right. Where the South at? Where the South? There's some South here, okay. What neighbors? Any Canadians? Canadians? South American countries? Anybody? Caribbean. Okay. The islands and things. What about overseas? Any European countries? African countries? Australian? Okay. I'm saving mine for last. Midwest. Any Midwest people in the house? That's what I'm talking about. Midwest, that's where I'm from, Detroit. I lived in Chicago. And Chicago means a lot to me. Chicago is the place where I had 2 ex-wives and 2 daughters in Chicago. That was made in Chicago. Also, it's where I found out about storytelling. Chicago's like an incubator for a lot of the arts and things. And I found out about storytelling in Chicago. And this is one of the first stories I wrote. One of my first stories is called My Father's Camera. I'm happy to share it with you. My father left me his camera. It was in a boxy aluminum case with 2 latches in the front that locked and 2 latches on the side that didn't lock. To unlock it, you have to get your fingernails into the little combination wheel and flick it to 7, 7, and one more 7. Then get your fingers under the levers and pull. Then the latches would loosen and you could open it. The side levers, just get your finger under those and pull, no combination. The camera was a Nikon F90. Pretty decent camera. It was separated in the case by a deep gray foam. The body, the flash, 2 lenses, one longer than the other. I didn't know much about photography like my dad. I get that the basic premise is point and shoot, but I'm intelligent enough to know that there's more to it than just that, though. People had careers as photographers, so it has to be more to it than just point and shoot. I thought about what I wanted to shoot. The camera had a wide strap that fit comfortable around my neck. I liked the way it wore. I felt authoritative with the strap around my neck and the camera hanging. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror for a long while. I stepped outside the door for a fuller view. It wore well. I thought, you gotta be creative with this kind of camera. You gotta be more creative than just smile or cheese. Possibly architecture or nature. Possibly people, but no smiling. I thought, I got an idea. I could do a series. I could do a series of myself taking photos lying down. I saw a guy on TV, it was this photographer. He was taking pictures of people naked. It was like groups and crowds of people, naked. They would be sometimes alone or as a couple. These are just regular people, pot bellies and stretch marks, naked, crazy shit. I thought if he asked me to do it, I would have said no. Then, no to being naked for a photo. I thought about what interesting pictures I could get lying down. You can join in your imagination if you like. I could shoot cloud formations. I could get a little bit of the branches and the leaves from the trees to get an impression that I'm lying down. I could shoot a baby mobile, as if I'm in a crib and I'm looking up and my parents are smiling, looking down. I can shoot a woman's face, agonizing in pleasure. I can shoot a determined man's face, sweating, looking down. I can shoot doctors. I can shoot the underbelly of a car. I can shoot ceilings. I put the camera away, and it stayed in the case for a long time. After a long time, I flicked 777, opened the case, put the wide strap around my neck, left my apartment. I went to downtown Chicago. I took pictures of the buildings and the bridges and the water. I laid down on the concrete in front of this tall statue, and I felt silly, and I got up and dusted myself off. I got bored and hungry, so I got on the train and to go south back home. On the train, 3 kids came in the car from the emergency exit while the train was moving. They came to the middle of the car and asked for everybody's attention. Only a few people looked up, but then they started singing. I didn't know the song, it was possibly their own, but it was good. A lady took out her earbuds. A man dog-eared this book. The lady took a $5 bill from her purse and handed it over to one of them. The guy handed them $1. I felt in my pockets and I didn't have any cash, only my credit cards. I stood up with my camera and asked if I could take a picture. They looked at each other and then they posed. One folded his arms, the other reached out at the camera and pointed. The other one just looked cool. I took pictures of them while I was trying to balance myself on the moving train. I told them thank you, and they went into the other emergency exit. I rode the train past my stop on Roosevelt to 95th Street, the end of the line, south side of Chicago. I started taking more pictures. I took a picture of a storefront church next door to a liquor store. People walking by and cars passing through my photo. I took a picture of a Jamaican restaurant. I thought the colors were original. I walked farther. The sun was slowly descending. In a few hours, it'd be gone. I walked down this side street, and there were kids there, but they weren't playing. They were just standing around. It was people sitting on the porch talking. I took more photos. I asked to take a picture of the kids, and some of them laughed and played with each other and posed a little bit. I took a picture of the cars in the houses in the street. One of the kids came over and said, I better stop taking so many pictures. He said it like he was trying to warn me in a friendly way. I looked down the street at the kids standing, the people on the porch sitting, talking. I took a picture of them sitting with my father's camera. One of the men got up from the stoop. He walked in my direction. He wasn't smiling for my picture. He said, what the fuck you taking pictures of, dog? My father's camera. Thank you. That's the right dap right there.
Yeah,
we
right.
did a good
That
dap.
was a good one. Shannon and I were talking earlier about how important it is to get a good dap, and it'll stay with you if it's not good. We got a good one. So that was good. Shannon, why that story? What does that story mean to you?
It's Chicago. I love Chicago. And when I moved to Chicago, I lived South Loop the first time I moved there. And I worked on the west side. And I used to take the Green Line to Lake And it was a tough neighborhood, Austin neighborhood, pretty tough. But I was be like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And the guys I worked with at the plumbing wholesale I worked at, a lot of them didn't come downtown. I would ask them to go out and, let's go get drinks or whatever. They didn't want to go to the downtown spots. It was lounges on the west side that they wanted to go to. But I was always like, man, why don't y'all enjoy the whole city? It's a big old beautiful city, because I live South Loop.
Yeah.
So the times when I was moving in Chicago, living south, living north, I didn't have any constraints on where I went in the city.
Yeah.
So that story, it kind of shows some of that, some of the things that kind of stop that free creativity that's just moving through you, and that you want to just express yourself creatively, no matter the situation, but then to reach a hard stop in reality.
How does and we have the privilege of knowing what happens next. Obviously in that story you don't say what happens next, but are you good, dog? Like what?
No.
Did you get jumped?
No, you don't get. You don't. It's nothing like that. It's more so just to be asked what you're doing in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Because there are invisible lines sometimes, but I think people know and appreciate and can feel when it's coming from an artistic way, rather than I'm just taking photos of license plates and house addresses and people's faces and stuff like that. But I've always not wanted to be constrained and limited in any way of my creativity, even in storytelling. I mean, we tell certain types of stories. You go to the Moth and Snap Judgment and different ones. I get up and tell a literary story. I'll play around. I love to experiment. You when you were talking about some singing and sometimes it being a sad set or whatever, and you're like, this might be a little weird. I welcome this weirdness sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this slow moving, picturesque story at sea change, So that's one of the things that I love to do. Challenge myself.
I think one of my favorite things about you, and I mentioned this, is that you speak in your authentic voice. You speak in the voice that God gave you, and that is the voice that you tell stories in. There's a lot of storytellers that have a storytelling voice. That there I was in the business over there. Like yours is very much like it's you. It's anybody who talks to you, has talked to you this weekend, knows that the same person that's telling stories is the same person that they're talking to. Why is it important to tell stories in your authentic voice?
I feel like I earned it through life. The challenges I've gone through, the failures I've had. I went through that time frame. It's real. Yeah. You start a corporate job after work, and I remember one of the people, one of the higher ups was telling me, "Hey Shannon, like I said something wrong. I said Pacific instead of specific." Now I was appreciating her correcting me, but I was like, man, I got to get it right. So I was trying to change my language and change how I act and how I am. But over time, you just earn the right just to be yourself in what you do, a polished part of yourself. But you do go through that time frame of feeling uncomfortable, but then you make the decision. You say, this is just what you get.
When you talk about the discomfort, you're talking about the idea of just speaking the way you speak, being who you are, and feeling some sense of resistance from people who think that you should be speaking and talking a different way.
Well, to assimilate. I mean, I grew up, my dad's from the South, my mom's Alabama, my dad Thompson, Georgia. They talk in a certain, I sound like my dad, So, but you can polish it, but at the same time, you don't have to just become a totally different voice, a totally just change every aspect of yourself. But that's earned over time. You figure it out, and I like that it's a lot more, people are thinking that way a lot more now. People are appreciating differences and appreciating variety and diversity and all those things. I think that's important.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the craft of storytelling. Like, what does it take for you to, I asked this Caroline, to go from an idea in your head, how are you pulling that out into a story that you're telling? Of course, they're true, but how are you pulling that scenario out from what you experienced into the words that you're saying?
I think of emotion and mood. I think of, I remember KRS-One, I was watching one of his interviews, and he was like, a song gotta have a mood, you know? And with my stories, I think of them as songs. I used to be in the hip hop community in Detroit. A lot of it, I think of them as songs, like this is a song that I'm playing. And I want to convey the emotion and mood to who's ever listening in the audience. Whatever that mood is, if that mood is, revolutionary or be strong, or this kind, or a mood of just inspiration, or a mood of just jazz. Like this story here was a jazz song too, in a lot of ways.
Oh, wow. So all of your songs feel like genres of music, you would say?
Yeah, and in podcasting, so all my stories would be on a podcast called Homemade, and I used to work with my producers and tell them that. I'll say, this story here is a blues song. And it didn't necessarily mean I wanted to use blues, but it's a blues song. So I'm not telling him to use blues within the production of it, because I don't want to be that out front. I want it to be subtle, but I want the feeling of blues as you listen to this song. Story.
Do you hear stories that same way, or do you only translate them that way in your mind? Do you hear them, like if you hear Yasmin's story, do you hear it that same way, like in a song genre?
If they meant for it to happen that way.
Come on.
I heard your story. I was vibing out. I heard your story. I heard music in the story you told when we was in DC.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a musical story. Yes. I think it's the intention of the storyteller. The audience can pick up their own things from it, but as a storyteller, I believe you have to have intention. It has to be an intention for the story. I don't even want to tell the story, and most times I've bombed if I don't have an intention. I'm like, why am I telling this story? Is there a reason? Or is it just to be cool on stage, Or do I want to convey a message to others? And even in that one, just conveying some of the constraints in Chicago or different areas in the country where creativity is blocked off sometimes. It's a plexiglass window in front of it, and you're like, I want to go on that side. I don't want to be on, So sometimes you feel those things in the city. Yeah.
Caroline, I'm interested to know, like, when you hear about the translation of a story in song, the way, does that resonate with you? Like, do you hear stories that way, or is it just music for you that you feel like a segregation in your mind between music and story?
No, I think that's totally real. I mean, yeah, you're right because I feel jazz is such a good example of like how that story felt like jazz to you, or translates, because it really is like an emotion, it's a vibe, like I don't know, it's kind of like a way to live in a way. So I feel like it could be, I don't know, that makes a lot of sense to me.
It's funny because when you said that, my producer brain came on, and when you said that, I was like, oh no, now when you said jazz, I'm like, oh, I can score this now. I know exactly how this would sound. It's not necessarily a jazz song, but maybe I'm using jazz instrumentation. Maybe we're like thinking like saxophone or something that's like kind of like helping the story along. So I think it's like a really interesting way to look at it.
Or even the production of it, you just thinking in the jazz mindset, not even using jazz. I will watch movies sometimes and it'll be a sad scene and they'll play the cheeriest music ever or something very pop sounding. And I'm like, I like that director. Whoever did that, let me see what they did, because I'm feeling something different while I'm seeing this. But I love that. But I love that in storytelling on stage and on podcasts as well. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Y'all ready for more stories? All right. So this next one is unconventional storytelling, but I'm sure all of y'all have been sitting here wondering, what is Andy J. Pizza doing over there? Why don't we reveal what Andy J. Pizza has been doing over there? Check out the screens. Yeah, let's give him a round of applause. So Andy Ambie has been live illustrating what's happening in front of you. Ambie is a New York Times best-selling author and illustrator, and my friend who has been live illustrating this entire event. We were excited to have him be a part of it. So, Ambie, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So obviously you are a literal storyteller. You have written children's books.
Yeah.
But also illustration is your medium, like art is your medium. Do you think of illustration as a primary source of storytelling or a secondary source of storytelling?
I really like this question because I was really in the identity of being an illustrator before I had a podcast, and I was doing live storytelling and then started writing books. And so I've thought a lot about this, and I think ultimately it depends on whether it's a nonfiction story or a fiction story, because I think of stories in symbols and then the meaning behind it. And so if it's a true story that I'm telling about my life, then that's the symbol, that's the illustration. And so I'll start there and then think like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? Why am I gravitating towards that? Whereas if I'm doing a fictional story, I'm usually gonna start with like, what is the meaning of this, and then work out into what symbols will illustrate that, you know? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think one thing that always strikes me about your illustrations is I like the way that they make me feel.
Yeah.
Like it feels like you draw a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
Like it'll be a picture and then it'll be a wavy line and I'm looking at it, it's very whimsical. Is that like, how do you develop that style? Like where it feels like you're drawing very emotionally in a lot of ways?
Yeah, you know, when I was in college, the teachers would be like, just draw the stuff that you like. And I would look over and this person was like drawing a pug. And I was looking over here and they're drawing, I don't know, Christmas scene or something. And all the things that I was interested in were like theoretical and like emotional. And I was like, I think I picked the wrong thing to do. Because you can't draw those things.
Yeah.
And then it took me a long time to realize like, oh, that problem is the solution. The book you mentioned actually was, it's called Invisible Things. And so I learned like, oh, the thing I'm trying, like visual art can be representational, but I think what makes illustration is that it's showing you something you couldn't see with just a picture.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always trying to like capture something that is invisible and make it visible.
I love that. I think I think you're absolutely doing that. I mean, who got a chance to look at the mural out there? Anyone? Make some noise? Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So you're kind of like, it feels like in a lot of ways you're freestyling, like a lot like jazz. But you're freestyling away. Do you feel a sense of musicality when you're doing your illustrations?
Yeah, weirdly, I have no musical talent, but like music was it was the reason I got into illustration was band posters. I was really obsessed with like the screen printed band posters thing.
Yeah.
And so actually, as an attempt to channel that passion, a lot of times before I make a book, I'll make a playlist. And again, trying to leap, like you can't see the music, but if you could, it would look like this. So it is a huge part of what I do.
It feels a lot like translation work in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. We're talking about translating emotions, translating feelings, and it's all coming through this like realm of storytelling in all these different forms.
Yeah.
So, give it up one more time for Andy J. Pizza. Paul, where are you going? Where are you going, Paul?
At my age, when I have to go to the bathroom, I gotta go.
You can go. I'm excited, y'all, because I remember I told y'all we were going to do a congregational. I was not lying. So to close out, we're so excited to have another song for you from Bob Wagner and friends, and we invite you all to join in and sing with us as Crystal comes up and does some praise dancing. So we invite you all to join in with us as we sing this joy that I have.
Bye.